The new era of DC Comics seems to be packing one surprise after another, and after the Absolute Universe has taken the fans by storm, we now have the newest multiversal crossover, DC K.O. The narrative sets up a high-stake cosmic showdown that feels like a cross between Crisis on Infinite Earth and a Mortal Kombat-like fighting game tournament. The eventful first issue comes with some unexpected moments and twists, and Scott Snyder has opened up a whole new world of possibilities, given how he's setting up this universe. In this video, we'll try to explain everything about DC K.O. and the storyline, so that you have an easier time grasping the somewhat complicated narrative. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The story of DC K.O. number 1. Apocalypse Now, DC style. Before I try to explain the intricate details of this world, let's break down the first issue. The comic opens with the end of the world. 7 days in the future, Darkseid has already won. Entire cities have fallen, the Justice League is in ruins, and Earth itself is being consumed by the heart of Apocalypse. Batman and Wonder Woman are already dead, and Superman is making one last desperate stand, only to be stopped by a sound so horrifying it literally brings him to his knees. That sets the tone right away that this is not your average crossover event. Just when it looks like it's over, Superman is suddenly yanked out of this doomed timeline by a mysterious group called the Quantum Quorum, time travelers who've taken refuge a week in the past. They bring Supes up to speed. Darkseid hasn't just conquered the future, he's invading time itself, collapsing all moments until only his reign exists. The Quorum's leader, the Time Trapper, who's now a strangely elegant version of Doomsday, lays out the horror. The only way to stop Darkseid is to use the Heart of Apocalypse against him. But there's a cost. To access the Heart, the Justice League must play by its rules. A tournament designed to test and corrupt any who approach it. This is where the KO knockout name starts to make sense. The stakes get real and deadly fast. From there, things escalate instantly. Batman, being Batman, comes up with a mad plan to choose who enters the tournament, hoping they can control the chaos. But the Heart has other ideas. It pulls in everyone it deems worthy of the fight. That includes not just heroes, but villains, anti-heroes, and even beings from other timelines. By the time the roster is revealed, it's absolute mayhem. Then we get the first major shocker. Batman and Wonder Woman die again. Yep, their timeline deaths become inevitable, a fixed point no one can rewrite. Superman barely has time to react before he's hurled into the first round of the tournament, pitted against someone he never thought he'd have to face, the corrupted version of himself from the Absolute Universe. The battle doesn't end with a clear winner, it ends with a devastating explosion of Omega energy, scattering the fighters and setting the tone for how unpredictable this series is going to be. The Absolute Universe Connection, a multiverse in crisis. If you've been following DC's recent comic sagas, you'll remember the Absolute Universe, introduced in DC All-In and expanded in Absolute Evil number 1. This universe exists parallel to the main DC timeline, but it's steeped in Darkseid's corruption, the very energy that fuels his Omega power. The Absolute Universe twists heroes into something darker, more extreme reflections of themselves. It's where the Joker became an apocalyptic nihilist and Superman nearly lost his humanity. DC K.O. brings that corruption front and center. The Heart of Apocalypse draws on that same energy, meaning every hero who steps into the tournament risks losing their soul. When the CBR review called this a shocking turn of events that changes the DC universe forever, they weren't joking. We're literally watching the foundation of DC's multiverse being rewritten. Character highlights. Who's in the fight? The first issue gives us glimpses of who's been drawn into this cosmic battle. Obviously, the Justice League are front and center. Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, and Aquaman. But as things spiral, we see other figures entering. Lex Luthor, Black Adam, Harley Quinn, and Deathstroke. Each one is fighting for a different reason. Redemption, power, revenge. And that mix of motives makes the fights personal as well as physical. There's also a wild twist involving time travelers who are trying to manipulate the outcome to keep reality from collapsing. The Quorum's involvement suggests that the timeline itself might be one of the main weapons in this war. What is the tone of the comic series like? DC K.O. number 1 feels like DC's answer to Secret Wars and Dragon Ball Z mashed into one. It's massive in scale, but it's not just about who can punch the hardest. The emotional core revolves around Superman's morality, how far he's willing to go to save everyone, even if it means becoming something terrible himself. Scott Snyder made it clear in interviews that this isn't just a spectacle for spectacle's sake. It's a story about identity and corruption, about what happens when the world forces even the purest hero to fight dirty. Think of it as Superman's ultimate trial by combat, but one that threatens to consume his soul. The shocks and twists. Heroes fall, Darkseid wins for now. Let's get into the big spoiler. Darkseid actually wins in issue number 1. That's right, the story ends with the heroes failing to stop him. The Heart of Apocalypse doesn't just power up the Justice League, it begins consuming the world. Superman and the Quorum barely survive, left to regroup for the next round. It's one of the bloodiest openings to a DC event ever, because Snyder starts with failure. Is it all about the corruption of heroism? One of the most fascinating ideas in DC K.O. is how the closer heroes get to power, the more the power corrupts them. The Heart of Apocalypse is more like a moral proving ground because it tests the souls of the fighters. It reveals who can resist the darkness and who can't. The more Omega energy you absorb, the less human you become. By forcing the DC cast to fight each other, the story is also flipping the whole concept of the Justice League upside down. What happens when Superman has to fight his teammates? When Batman realizes that humanity's survival might require him to lose his own humanity? These are the kinds of questions Snyder loves to explore, and DC K.O. pushes them to their absolute limits. The Multiversal Madness. Guest fighters join the fray. As if things weren't insane enough, DC used New York Comic Con 2025 to drop the bombshell. The tournament will expand beyond the DC universe. In an upcoming wave of issues, players from other universes will join the fight, including Homelander from The Boys, Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat, Red Sonja and Vampirella from Dynamite Comics, Annabelle and Haunted Doll from The Conjuring, and Samantha from Beneath the Trees Where Nobody See. I mean, come on, that's bonkers in the best way possible. It's a multiverse mashup that promises matchups fans never thought we'd see. Superman vs. Homelander is already teased as being canonical, now that the Boys character has officially joined DC continuity for the event. Snyder even called it the bonus level. Think of it as a crossover expansion after the first arc. This implies we're heading towards something way bigger than just another Darkseid story. If DC K.O. continues the pattern of previous events like the Dark Knight's Metal, it could permanently stitch other comic universes into the DC multiverse itself. The villain's role. Who really benefits? Darkseid may be the cause of all this, but he's not the only one playing the board. Lex Luthor, Brainiac, and the Reverse Flash are all hinted to have side deals going on, manipulating the rules of the tournament. The question becomes, who actually stands to gain if one of the heroes win? If the Heart of Apocalypse corrupts everything it touches, maybe no one can handle that power without losing themselves. And that's the moral loop this series loves to trap its characters in. How is the artwork and style so vibrant? The artwork by Javi Fernandez and Zermanico is jaw-dropping. The pages are vivid, cinematic, and full of kinetic energy. You can almost hear the punches landing. Fernandez's gritty realism blends perfectly with Snyder's surreal cosmic writing. Each panel has that dreamlike balance of chaos and clarity, like the fight scenes in Dragon Ball filtered through a dark mythic lens. Colorist Alejandro Sanchez deserves huge credit here. His use of the fiery reds and toxic greens makes every page feel alive, like you're standing next to some cosmic engine burning reality itself. It's the kind of visual storytelling that grabs you and doesn't let go. The future of DC K.O. Where this is headed. So where does it all go from here? Based on the hints dropped across interviews, teasers, and previews, DC K.O. is the first phase of a two-part event. Snyder described the current arc as the Tournament of the Strongest, with a follow-up titled DC K.O. Omega, which will bring back the survivors to face Darkseid one last time, and potentially reboot parts of the DC timeline. The introduction of cross-universal fighters like Homelander and Sub-Zero also suggests DC is exploring a true battle multiverse, a space where other publishers can officially cross over. That means this isn't just a one-off gimmick, it's possibly the next big phase for DC storytelling. And even though Darkseid's victory feels final at the end of issue 1, Snyder has teased that this version of the villain might not remain the central focus. There's a possibility that Darkseid himself gets corrupted by the Heart of Apocalypse. Alpha energy, creating something beyond even his control. That could pave the way for a new cosmic god-tier villain, a fusion of light and Darkseid power that resets the multiversal balance. Homelander vs. Superman, the showdown of the century. The most talked about reveal by far is Homelander's inclusion. During the New York Comic Con, Scott Snyder confirmed that the event will feature an entire mini-arc called The Bonus Level, where the DC tournament opens up to a pocket dimension. That's where fighters from across the multiverse join the battle. And the main event there, Superman vs. Homelander. According to Snyder, this fight is designed to answer the fan question everyone's asked for years. Who really wins between the ultimate hero and the ultimate fraud? But he also emphasized that it's not just a strength comparison, it's a philosophical duel. What happens when Superman's true compassion meets Homelander's bottomless ego? Snyder says that the fight will explore the price of hope versus the illusion of power. Early sneak peeks show Homelander being treated as more than just a cameo guest. He's a full participant in the DC K.O. storyline, and given how DC is describing this as a canonical crossover, his actions here could have ripple effects across both universes. There's also the brutal possibility that Homelander wins temporarily, but at a cost. Some fans believe he'll absorb corrupted Omega energy, transforming into a sort of Omega Homelander. Either way, the Superman vs. Homelander arc is shaping up to be one of the defining moments in 2020 superhero comics. The bigger picture, the future of the DC universe. It could set the stage for an entirely new multiverse era, one where the barriers between publishers aren't as rigid, and shared universes become the new storm. Think of DC K.O. as the first domino in a chain that could unify worlds, like The Boys, Mortal Kombat, Red Sonja, and possibly even Watchmen in one narrative continuity. And even narratively, the implications are staggering. If Superman ultimately wins and masters both the Alpha and Omega energies, we might see him evolve into a higher dimensional figure, a Superman Prime for this new age. But if Darkseid or another corrupted hero wins, we could be headed into another Crisis-level reboot. Given Snyder's history with metal and death metal, I wouldn't rule that out. Marvelous verdict. Why DC K.O. matters. DC K.O. #1 feels like the kind of comic book event you live for as a fan. Unapologetically over the top, packed with surprises and completely unafraid to blow up the rulebook. It's big, messy, and ambitious in the best way. Snyder and Williamson have pulled together an Avengers Endgame level explosion of characters and turned it into something that still feels focused on one emotional center. Superman's struggle to stay good in a world that keeps breaking. The creative synergy here, the art, the story, the sheer spectacle, is one of the boldest statements DC has made in years. We're only at round 1 of this comic knockout, and it's already punched a hole in what we thought we knew about the DC universe. What comes next? Well, if Superman vs. Homelander is any proof, things are only going to get more outrageous from here. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this whole new bizarre world, and also your views on the potential future storyline they might be exploring going ahead. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.